Okay, in this sidebar I want to discuss the attachment transform rules again. So I already have some code here just to save some time, since this is like a bonus section, so I don't, well, hopefully I won't spend too much time on this. Okay, so I have this rotation, add relative rotation, commented out that we added previously, and basically the setup is the same other than what I do in begin play. So I still do this offset, okay, permanent mesh component, add world offset, and I do 100 units here in Z. Then in the constructor, you can see I still have the same setup, and I also have this add world offset to the target mesh component, 150 units in Y. But you can see in the attach to component, instead of doing if attachment transform rules and that long thing that we did previously, what I'm doing is I'm passing it this struct. So let's just left click in here, Control, Shift and Spacebar to get the parameters back. And you can see we still pass it that using component, and we also do, you can see it references a struct of type if attachment transform rules. So basically I'm just passing in this struct that I create here. You can see it's a bit long. Okay. So what I do is I give it a name and then I initialize the members. You see E attachment rule, keep world, and E attachment rule, keep relative, and so on. And then false at the end. So what's that? Well, again, if I left click in here, I can also actually show like what that takes in. So Control Shift Spacebar to bring this back up. And you can see in location rule, in rotation rule, in scale rule, in weld simulated bodies, spool, and I set that to false. We'll see why it's okay to set that to false in a second. But basically you can see that what I'm doing is for each one of these, I can now specify the rule. For the location rule, I want to keep the world location. Then for rotation, I want to keep the relative rotation. And for scale, I set here to also keep the relative. Okay, keep relative. And then again, that final thing I set to false. Okay, so let's just go and right click on this and I'll go to the declaration. So if attachment transform rules. And actually, if I also quickly bring up the documentation, you can see if I scroll down, you have these constants. So keep all transform and all of that. Then you can see we have two constructors. Can take in one, so E attachment transform rule, like what is that thing? We'll talk about that shortly. And you can have one where you have one for each. Okay, one up here which takes in basically just a single E attachment rule and a boolean that will apply whatever you pass into each one of those inside. Whereas here we have, for the second constructor, we have a bit more control. That's the point of this video. Let's say we want more control over this function. Okay, so attach to component, let's say we want more control. Well, that is what this is for. And then you can see we also have those variables and so on. Okay, so I'll just close out of this. And again, in the engine types.h now we can see rules for attaching components. You can see this is a struct called if attachment transform rules. And here we have presets. Okay, so these are presets. You can see those are also if attachment transform rules. Then we have this constructor here that will set E attachment rule. Okay, in rule. So it's going to set all of the variables to that in rule. Where are the variables? You can see down here, scale rule, rotation rule, location rule, E attachment rule. So it's going to set all of those equal to whatever you pass in here. Then you have the second constructor, which gives us more control, basically. So we can set each one individually. Alright, so let's go and look at what this E attachment rule thing is that you can see we pass in, and the variables are also E attachment rules. So what is this E for? Well, in E, if you hover over this, it says enum. So I'll just right click on that and then I'll go to the definition for that. Okay, so you can see E attachment rule, this is an enumeration. And you can see that this has these three members. Keep relative, keeps current relative transform. Okay, as a relative transform to the new parent. Keep world automatically calculates the relative transform. such that the attached component maintains the same wool transform. And then you have here snap transform to the attached point, which is snap to target. So these are like states. Okay, we use enumerations quite a lot in game development. And we'll talk about enumerations again in a bit more detail later. So I'll just go back, and so I'm back in engine types.h. So basically these, again, enumerations, these will store the state that we set it to. Okay, then I'll scroll up a bit here and we can see like these presets. Okay, and so what I'll do is I'll go and right click on this and I'll go to the definition of that. And you'll see we jump to the engine types.cpp file. And you can see again if attachment transform rules, if attachment transform rules, and you have keep relative transform and all of those that we used in the lesson on that, okay, on that attached to component where we used that struct. Okay, so here you can see keep relative transform will pass in this keep relative. It uses attachment rule, keep relative. Keep wool transform will use attachment rule, keep wooled. And you can see these are all set to false. That boolean is all set to false. That's why I just set mine to false as well. So if you are kind of unsure of whether or not it's okay to set something to true or false, just go and look at some of the defaults or some of the code that is already available. And here, this one uses the constructor that has like all of these parameters. So it gives you more flexibility. So in this case, so again, not including scale. So it's going to snap to target, for location, rotation, and for scale, it's going to keep the world. And so it's going to set the final one there to false. And then snap to target, including scale, is going to do this here, snap to target and false. Okay, so I'll close out of that. And back in very interesting actor.cpp, again, I have if attachment transform rules, my transform rules. I called my struct here my transform rules, and I initialized it like this. In this case, for location, I decided to use keep world, and then for rotation, I used keep relative, and then scale, I also used keep relative, and then I set that again to false. Okay, and so again in the attached to component, I just pass that in here, that struct. So I can control an F5 to run this. Okay, and you can see this compiles fine and it will run the editor now. So I recommend that you go and play around with different combinations. Now in the video where we talked about the F attachment transform rules, I applied some offset in the constructor and in begin play. Now you don't have to do that programmatically. Of course, when you open up the editor, you have that act in the world, you can just apply some offset or rotation or scale to the permanent mesh component or to the cone mesh component, for example, and then hit play, and then, based on that, you can see the results. So you don't have to do it in C++. But the point of this video is that if I had to show you like all of the different combinations, that would take a long time. So I've already spent a long time, discussing this. There's a function and these rules. So the point going forward is that I will not be able to show you each and every like constructor and function overload. You'll need to kind of experiment, watch the video, get the basic idea down, and then go and look at the documentation for that function or struct. And then based on that, you can, play around a bit. It'll take some time, but in the end, you'll have a better understanding of what's going on and the options that you have should you eventually want to apply that to your own project. You have flexibility available to you that you won't know about because, again, if you just watch videos and you don't play around by yourself, then you won't have that understanding. So I spent this time in this video just to show you the different options that you have. But going forward, you will have to go and look at the documentation to explore the various options that are available to you. All right.